Well, Tom, I tell you what, it's been an interesting week and a half. Feels like 2 weeks. I mean, we started out in Wilmington with our retreat, and gosh, 3 days of stuff. And we had our meeting last night, so we got a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover.
Yes, we do. And unfortunately, we only have a half hour to do so, but there will be more information forthcoming, especially with what we discussed at the retreat over the next couple of months.
Yeah.
But it was a good retreat.
I thought it was. I thought it really was. I thought we covered a lot of ground. I thought it was just right. Part of me doesn't like to go out of town for these retreats. I mean, I would prefer to be at the event center, but I got to tell you, being sequestered with the group does help aid a lot of different conversations that wouldn't otherwise occur. And so there is some benefit to it.
There's obviously some benefit, but I know we'll get into it, but having the people from Wilmington on the second day present about their downtown development and things that they have done downtown to really invigorate activity down there. Hopefully that's something that we can use in forward thinking about what we can do to invigorate more activity downtown.
Well, let's just jump into it, Tom. Okay. I mean, you brought it up, and I think you're right. One of the things that was impressive to me is that group, they had actually started a downtown redevelopment corporation that is affiliated with the city of Wilmington, but is not necessarily, it's a quasi relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you something, I was, last time I was really spent some time down in Wilmington, it's probably, 11 years ago. And the only thing down there was a Hilton and a Ruth Chris, and then a little bit of downtown, redevelopment was starting to occur. Today, the entire riverfront's covered with a convention center, several different hotels, apartments, condominiums, the whole bit.
And a boardwalk from practically one end downtown to the other.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It really has brightened things up the way they have worked down there. Of course, I wish we had a Cape Fear River type river helps. Right outside.
Sure.
But we can still do some things that they've done.
We've got a railroad track. Well, I mean, we've got other things. You work with what you have to work with. But the thing that stood out for me, they had $780 million of tax base that this corporation had helped create. And so it's a public-private thing. Mm-hmm. And they're hoping to get to $1 billion. So, what were the highlights for you? I mean, so that's sort of the top line, okay? It's a separate organization. I think the initial seed funds came from the city of Wilmington. Their entire focus is trying to make downtown better and a positive experience for developers.
Right. And they have some large businesses down there, mm-hmm. and hopefully we can work towards getting some business to come down, as we've talked in the past, because that would generate more people downtown, especially during the daytime hours.
That's right.
And the weekday hours.
That's right. And they also took a lead on, dealing with maybe homeless populations, dealing with vagrants and other issues associated with not just downtown, but all over, but in their development zone area. So I thought it was a very innovative approach, and I'm sure it's not unique to Wilmington, but it's the first time I'd really thought of such a concept in the context of Rocky Mount.
And for those who are listening in, viewing this presentation, if you have time, go back to our website and find that presentation on what Wilmington has done. Because the unhoused, the homeless, they have someone who works the street all the time to help transition them to places that other people can help them. So there's a lot of good things, and hopefully we can bring some of those ideas.
Sure. Well, I thought that was great. While we're talking about homelessness, we did have a presentation because it's a challenge, I should say, and not just in Rocky Mount, but all over the place. Yeah. But Jenny Moorbutter and a group from the city of Rocky Mount, a committee that's been working on homeless issues, came and spoke to us, gave us about an hour presentation. And a couple take homes from that for me was, first of all, I didn't realize that we had the number of encampments that we have in Rocky Mount. And that was just a surprise to me. I've seen a lesser footprint, I think, of homeless populations in Rocky Mount in the last last couple of months, it tends to ebb and flow. But that was really a surprise to me, and then really a new definition of what is homeless. It ranges from, the guy you see with the sign who's living under the bridge to somebody who is couch surfing or living off the grace of family or friends to, somebody just had an unusual financial setback and lost the rent money, and are trying to get back on their feet.
Right. Well, and Jenny has certainly done a good job of spearheading this group, and they present a lot of information. Again, for our people out there, take a look at the presentation that's out there on our retreat, because there's a lot of information, facts that we can't cover in a short period of time, but facts that I think people will be amazed about the extent of the situation that we have in our area. And I want to emphasize area.
That's right.
Edgecombe, Nash, in the city of Rocky Mount.
That's right. And you're right. And we can't possibly cover it all. But I mean, one of the concepts was, we're all familiar with the soup kitchen and with the, the housing overnight. We're familiar with the Bassett Center, where somebody may have more temporal housing and then trying to transition somewhere else. And they were creating villages, and there's several models that exist out there. And I don't even feel like we covered all of the ground that we needed to in the hour that we have, but I would encourage people to check it out because I thought it was interesting, and I think it's a growing need and something that we just need to be cognizant of and aware of. The city of Rocky Mount has always done all they can do to try to help different populations, but the truth is we just don't have a whole lot of money, and we don't have all the money in the world. And yet people seem to think that we do. And I wish that we did, because it would be a lot easier to manage through some of the challenges that we have.
Right. And what we have got to do is better partner with our commissioners, county commissioners, both Edgecombe and Nash, to see if we can get them to be more financially given to the problem.
Sure. No, I think that's right. It needs to be a collaborative effort, not just in the city limits, but within the two counties that we reside in, and even regionally, right? I mean, and being on 95, being on the main line of the railroad going north and south, all those things aid people getting here, and they're a part of the challenge that we need to consider. But back to we don't have all the resources in the world. We really spent a great deal of time talking about where we were.
Right.
And where we are in terms of our financial picture. And really, it was a fact-finding. I don't know if it's fact-finding, but it was at least an information share from Peter and Kenneth and other members of the leadership team in the city of Rocky Mount, just kind of prepping us going into our budget session, which I think is going to be a very long and entailed process.
I envision that we will have extensive meetings about the proposed budget for next year, because, as you said, there's only a certain amount of money that we have, and the needs are greater than what we can possibly do, and we got to prioritize.
Right. Well,
and that's what we do personally at our houses or whatever, or businesses. You got to prioritize how you're going to spend the money, where it is best needed. But we just can't be the savior for everything. And,
right.
And I'm looking forward to spending more time this year.
Right.
On the budget. It was great that we had a CIP presentation along with a brief overview of the expectations.
First time in 2 years, by the way.
First time in 2 years. And again, if people would like to know about the CIP, spend some time going back to YouTube and seeing the presentation there. We have a lot of needs here in Rocky Mount.
Well, we do, and some of our infrastructure, we got to continue to maintain that. We did get behind on funding some of those during COVID for various and sundry reasons, and I'm not being too critical because during COVID we really didn't know where sources of income were going to come, whether we were going to be in a good shape, bad shape. It was a good time to kind of hold back a little bit on some of those expenditures. And so doing, what we did is we allowed infrastructure to age without a whole lot of repair. Not that 2 years make that much of a difference, but it's impactful. We started talking about ordering Fire trucks, for instance, we were hearing that, before you could get one in 18 months, now it might be 4 years before you get one in delivery. And that makes a big difference.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And we got infrastructure needs and some other big needs here in the community. And, our citizens want us to spend the money as expeditiously and cautiously as possible. But we got to be mindful that we can't continue to dip in general reserves like we had to last year.
That's right. Well, and I think we ought to go and set the table going into what our budget looks like. And my take home from those conversations really look like this. We have about a $200 million a year budget in the city of Rocky Mount. Approximately, and these are rough numbers, approximately $100 million are utilities, so electrical, water, sewer, gas, which we all sell. Those are separate. They all have their own different fund balances and funds. And that's approximately $100 million for our budget. And we try to keep those obviously separated because, they're businesses. Now, we are able to charge a management fee, if you will, that flows over into our operating account, which is also about $100 million. And of the $100 million, which is really what I'll call the active monies that the city of Rocky Mount has to work with, which includes what we can pull over from our enterprise funds. We're about $9 million over budget on plan based on what we had budgeted at the beginning of last year. So the $9 million, and I want everybody to hear, we're in good financial shape. I mean, City of Rocky Mount is in fine financial shape. And we've had 1 year that has been a challenge this past year. $9 million is the number. So we've had to pull from our fund balances, basically our savings account, to cover that. And again, it's not a problem for next year, but we cannot continue to do that. It's a bad practice.
That's right.
And so we've got to figure out where to reduce the $9 million over some period of time. And that'll be our discussion because it's now March, call it April. So from April until July, when we had to pass June 30th, when we had to pass the budget, beginning of the new fiscal year. So we've got to figure out how to close about 8%, 9% of our total budget numbers. They've come from several different things. We have created several jobs were created that were not part of the pay and compensation plan. And they did not go through council approval. That represents a significant part of that. We have the management of labor, which is part of that. And then we have some just natural inflationary challenges associated with just living in the times that we are. We didn't account for or anticipate, really the period of inflation that we've just come through over the last 2 years. And so that's impacting us as well. So those are my take homes. And I know that it's going to take a lot of work for us. And I think I heard you today in our meeting with Peter just, say, look, I'm committed to giving you as much time as you need to try to get through this budget.
Right.
Small sessions would be good, helpful, I think, but we'll see what direction Peter takes in getting that for us.
And we definitely need to have a plan A and a plan B.
Sure we do.
We just can't have one, here it is.
Right.
But we got to, what if we can't do this? What's going to happen? We got to look at various ways to go about, because I'm going to be committed. We passed a tax increase last year.
Right.
And I think it'll behoove us, we as a council, try to keep the current tax rate like it is, see how we can live within that current tax rate.
Well, and that's important to talk about. We did have a rebasing of property values.
Right.
We are ahead of collections, which is good news. I did propose, and we did pass a rainy day fund provision, which took us a little bit over the budget neutral number. So, in terms of dollars per 100, we actually went down on our tax rate.
Right.
But the whole dollar amount that you feel, the impact is more. Well,
thanks for explaining that.
Well, it takes, it's a little confusing, but it matters to a lot of folks, right? I mean, we tend to think in 30-second sound bites, and we have to be careful, I think, not to just, for the general folks to understand that. And I think it's important.
I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah. Well, and then, that kind of leads us a little bit, while we're talking about inflationary things that are going to feed into our budget is where we are on the utility cost. And so we've got in Kempa, and I'm not sure folks know who that is, but it's basically the electricities group. And then electricities are comprised of, I don't remember how many folks to use, 30, 40 cities in North Carolina, Virginia, and South Carolina, of which we're one. And I believe that I heard the other night we are the third largest consumer of electricity.
That's right.
In the group.
Behind Wilson and Greenville.
That's right. The other thing that's of note, though, is because commodity pricing have gone up so much. A lot of these other, this is kind of a confusing concept. So I'm trying to break it down. You tell me where I'm kind of, I'm getting it or not getting it. But we are resellers. We Electricities got together basically to build Sharon Harris as a way to hedge our bet on the cost of electricity that were going up in the 70s at exponential rates. It turned out it wasn't such a great financial move for us and the other 30 or 40 cities. We ultimately sold that, I believe, to Duke or to Progress. I can't remember. But regardless, we now become wholesalers of energy. And we buy our energy from Duke as in part because of the debt. We were able to release the debt from the purchase of or the building of the Sharon Harris plant, as well as other mechanisms. So we've committed to buying energy at a rate. The rate's not important. What's important to know is that there's a true up. So if the cost of the production of that electricity goes up, each member city is responsible for paying their share of that. And if it goes down, there'll be a rebate. But we've had over the last 3 years, so prior to, call it the last 10 years, it's roughly been even, right?
Yes.
It's a little bit under, a little bit over, a little bit under, a little bit over. So what the city of Rocky Mount has done historically is we have put in a stabilization fund. So we charge maybe just a little bit more than what our cost is. If we get a rebate, we put it into that stabilization fund so that the rate variance, the commodity cost don't impact our customers. So I know that my electricity is going to cost me X per kilowatt hour, period. Well, the last 3 years, as I understand it, those true ups have been in the neighborhood of $50 million. I mean, we're not talking about, previous
Right.
$50 million. Now it's divided by 40. And I think our share of that $50 million, did I see it right? It's something in the neighborhood of about 8%, I think it is. So call it $4 or $5 million. Well, we have that stabilization fund, so we're in good shape. And we will be in good shape. But our neighbors in Wilson and Greenville and other places have chosen just to directly pass along both the upside and the downside to their consumers. And so as a result, they're having escalating energy costs associated with it. And so I think it speaks to two things. One, I really appreciate those previous to us who decided to put that stabilization fund in play, because I think that really is the right thing to do. You don't have any bad surprises. The other thing is we're going to end up in a really good place. So we're going to have to vote eventually on this week or next week or whenever it is on how we want to do that. If we want to receive a rebate directly or if we want to just kind of roll that into different options. And so I'm expecting that we'll have to make a decision on that. But the point is, everything is going up and the city is getting squeezed, and we're having to figure out where to make those margins and where to make those cost cuts if where it's appropriate, and how to stabilize the ship in a way that everybody on board bears it fairly, but at the same time, there are not any indirect surprises, particularly for those on fixed income. Now, you think did I do an okay job on describing that?
You did a wonderful job. Large those imbalances the last 3 years is due to extreme gasoline costs.
That's right.
Not gasoline.
LP gas.
LP gas. Propane gas.
Yeah. Right.
And that's where, the more reliance on higher prices of gas.
Right.
Solar energy is more expensive than fuel oil.
That's right.
And coal. They're doing away with sources of fossil fuels in a way.
Right.
that has increased the cost
Right.
to Duke,
Right.
which passed on to us. And hopefully, as we discussed, if there can be some more gas pipelines constructed throughout the country, and
Right.
especially in our area, gas can be a cheaper source than some other alternatives. And we got to look at ways that we can minimize the rate that we charge our customers.
Right.
But we got to operate that electric system
Right.
in a manner that we are consistent in the service we deliver.
Well, I mean, that has a more direct impact on our residents than anything
That's
else.
exactly right.
You
That's
know.
exactly right.
And being in the utility business, I think, is a distinct advantage for our citizens. I really do.
We have quite a number of substations.
Right.
They have generators that are there in case they are needed.
Right.
Some generators are getting old, which need replacement. I think we approved Monday night in our consent agenda, I think $800,000 to cover the cost of a replacement generator.
We did, yeah.
But that can be used at times that can benefit the city of Rocky Mount.
Right.
When there's peak time usage and Duke charges more, we can cut on our generators and reduce our cost. So,
well, that's right.
It's complicated, but citizens, we are doing our very best to continue to maintain one of the cheapest rates for electricity anywhere in our area.
That's right. And I, like you, I'm sure, hear a lot about how expensive utilities are in the city of Rocky Mount. The truth is further from the truth than that. I mean, we have one of the cheapest cost per kilowatt hours of those around us, and we're really doing a pretty good way to manage through that, I think. And I think, peak hours, I don't think folks really understand that either. But if you consider that the cost is $1, and if you have to use the electricity during a peak period, the cost then becomes $2 an hour. If you're using it at a period when nobody's below peak, it might be 50 cents an hour. And so we're having to average that out. So when you start talking about using generators during peak hours, we're actually reducing the cost to our consumer.
That's right. That's right.
And we are committed to doing that. And that's been, I think, a very positive thing for the city. So what else, kind of grabbed you from our meeting? I mean, we're covering the ground, but I think we're setting the base for, budget talks that we're really, I think, are going to dominate our headlines over the next 2-3 months. And I think need to. We're going to have to make some tough decisions. I felt like that we covered a lot of ground in our retreat, but again, that was just sort of a platform of understanding of data to really be able to really start doing the work of what I think council needs to do.
You're so right, Mayor. And we got next 90 days is going to be very, very busy days for all of us.
Right.
And, as we go into open budget workshop sessions, I encourage people come or look in through the city's TV channel, how we are discussing and how we're finalizing this budget for 25-26.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And your input is needed.
That's right.
We'd love to hear from you.
That's right, and it matters, and it really does matter.
Yes, it does.
In the meeting, we had the consent agenda, as you mentioned, we went through, but I do want to point out that we recognize the Rocky Mount Academy Lady Eagles for winning the state championship.
Isn't that a great accomplishment?
That really
Undefeated.
is. That really is.
Year.
That's right.
I think 3 were all
state, all conference.
State.
We had several all state, several all conference, several all tournament.
The coach
was coach of the year of the CIC, Catherine Johnston. Just a fantastic lady, and of course then you had Jay Hooks, who served as the assistant, did a great job. So bringing those two together. So I'd grown up with both of those, so it's kind of neat to see the success that both Jay and Catherine brought to the to the team. So anyway, that's super exciting to see that. So anyway, I think the message is stay tuned. We got a lot in front of us. CIP, we didn't have a chance to really go over that, but a number of issues there. One of the things that was proposed, at least in the 5-year plan, is the potential of having to raise some sort of bond money to be able to take care of some aging infrastructure needs. And, I'm usually kind of debt adverse to the extent that if you can help it, if you don't have to do it, I would prefer not. And I think a lot of people fall in that category. But I think it's also important to note that, all debt's allowing us to do is amortize out on a payment plan, if you will, the aging infrastructure. And we don't want to get to a place where it's a crisis. And there's not anything we were doing in the next year or two, but, it was proposed for year 3. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of conversation around that too.
Well, there will be extensive discussions about a revenue bond, but,
Right.
There comes a time when you got to do something.
Right.
And we got some big projects that need to be studied and completed.
Right.
And the sooner we can do those in the long run, it's the cheaper way of doing it. Because if you defer to another year, material costs are still going up.
Right.
Labor costs is going up. Everything else is going up. Let's utilize and time it in such a way that we can get the biggest bang for the bond money that we're going to try to put together. And of course, it would be a general obligation bond from what I learned in Wilmington. And of course, that will have to go to the voters of City of Rocky Mount to approve. So,
well, that's true.
So we're going to have to do a good job of selling this.
Right.
But I think it's something needed, and we can do that.
Well, and it may be that we don't have to. We'll see. We'll just see. A lot of ifs, maybe ifs, but we've got a plan A, B, and C, right? And so that's a certainty. We do have the borrowing capacity to be able to do that. These are items that we'll need. Hopefully, our development out there in the Interstate 95 and 64. We've had a lot of positive returns on that, and it's entirely possible that it may generate sufficient sums to be able to handle some of these CapEx needs that we have out there. So, it's a little bit of a timing issue. And as my father used to say, the timing never seems to work in my favor. But anyway, it is a timing issue.
But there's got to be proper planning first.
That's right.
We got to realize that a proper plan does take time, but you want to make sure it's done right.
Right.
And we can't do it in a very hasty type manner.
Right. No.
But we can't put it off either,
No. I mean, well, you're right. I mean, it never gets any cheaper. So
that's right.
So I tell you what, it's been the blink of an eye. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. I don't feel like we've gotten very deep into anything, but our time's up, Tom. So, I think what we should do is you keep pointing out, encourage people to go back to YouTube, check out our meetings, look at some of that, get down to the detail, in particular, our retreat.
I think people spending time on the retreat, and I look forward to people giving me a call or stopping me.
There you go. The music's starting to play, Tom.
Stopping me. Boom.
That's it. Well, look, it's been great. And until next week.